The first thing I remember is the sound of the glasses. Someone had just opened another bottle of wine, and the table was loud in that easy, comfortable way it gets when people have known each other too long to be polite. Plates half empty, chairs pulled closer together, everyone leaning in. My wife was telling a story. She had always been good at that. She knew how to hold attention, how to stretch a moment until everyone leaned forward waiting for the end of it. I'd seen it 100 times at dinners like this. Our friends liked her for it. I was smiling before I even knew why. She was talking about her college years. The story drifted toward an ex she used to mention occasionally, usually in passing. Nothing unusual about that. Then she laughed. "Well," she said, raising her glass slightly, "let's just say my ex was bigger and better." The table burst into a strange kind of laughter. Not the loud kind. The uncertain kind. For a second I thought, maybe I'd misunderstood the direction of the joke. I kept the smile on my face because everyone was looking at me. Someone choked on their drink. A couple of people looked down at their plates. One friend gave a quick laugh that stopped halfway through. Another reached for the bread basket like it had suddenly become very important. My wife grinned like she had just landed a clever punchline. I lifted my glass and took a sip. It tasted like nothing. Someone changed the subject almost immediately. Sports, I think. Or travel plans. I don't remember the words. I only remember how carefully everyone avoided looking directly at me for the next few minutes. A friend refilled my drink without asking. The night continued. People told other stories. Someone put music on. My wife laughed louder than usual, filling every pause. If anyone expected a reaction from me, they didn't get one. When we got home, the house was quiet. She kicked off her shoes and headed to the kitchen for water. "You're quiet," she said. I leaned against the counter. It was an interesting joke. She sighed immediately, the way people do when they already know the conversation they don't want to have. "Oh, come on," she said. "It was just a joke. About me. It wasn't about you." I didn't argue. I just nodded. The apology that might have ended the moment never arrived. Instead, she looked irritated, like I had complicated something simple. We went to bed without saying much more. I expected the memory to fade. Usually things do. But it didn't. Over the next few days, the moment kept replaying itself in small fragments. The way the room had paused. The way the laughter had collapsed halfway through. The way people avoided my eyes. And something else started happening. Every time my wife mentioned her past, even casually, I heard the echo of that joke inside it. It wasn't that she kept repeating the comparison. She didn't. But the line had already been drawn in public. You can't fully erase something once a room full of people has heard it. Work became easier than home. At the office, things made sense. Decisions led to outcomes. Problems had structure. People respected my judgment there because it solved something real. No one laughed at me in meeting rooms. Weeks passed. Then another gathering came up, same group of friends. Different house this time. Someone's birthday. For a moment I considered skipping it, saying I had work, avoiding the room where everyone had heard the joke. But absence can look like confirmation. So I went. The party started the way these things always do, music low in the background. Small clusters of conversations forming around the room. A couple of people greeted me a little more warmly than usual, not pity exactly. Something closer to carefulness. My wife was already in the center of the living room, telling another story. She caught my eye once and smiled. Everything looked normal from the outside. For a while it was. Then I noticed the rhythm of the conversation shifting. She started talking about old relationships again. Not directly repeating the same story, but moving toward the same territory. I recognized the shape of it before anyone else did. The room leaned in slightly. Another punchline was forming. And then someone interrupted. "Hey," Mark said casually. Mark was older than the rest of us. Quiet most of the time. The kind of guy who usually listened more than he spoke. But this time he spoke just early enough to break the rhythm. You know, he said, turning toward me, I've been meaning to ask you about that project you finished last quarter. The shift was subtle but immediate. People turned their heads. What project? Someone asked. I saw my wife pause mid-sentence. Mark kept going. The one with the regional rollout. Didn't your team handle the whole restructuring? Now 3 people were looking at me. I straightened slightly in my chair.
Yeah,
I said. We did. More questions followed. Real ones. Curious ones. What had gone wrong initially? How we fixed it? How long it took? The conversation built slowly around those answers. Someone pulled up a chair. Another person asked about expansion plans. The room changed direction completely. My wife grew quieter. Not embarrassed exactly. But the spotlight she had been standing in had moved somewhere she couldn't easily control. I didn't brag. I didn't perform. I just answered calmly. 20 minutes later the party felt different. More grounded. Less like a stage. At one point I caught Mark's eye across the room. He gave the smallest nod. Not dramatic. Not heroic. Just enough to say he knew exactly what he had done. The drive home afterward was quiet. Streetlights slid across the windshield. My wife stared out the window for most of the ride. Neither of us mentioned the interrupted joke or the first dinner weeks ago. But the silence between us felt different now. Not tense, just honest. Somewhere along the way I realized something I hadn't understood that first night. Dignity isn't something someone can return once they've taken it in public. It has to be rebuilt in smaller ways. Sometimes it happens in quiet rooms, sometimes it happens because one person refuses to laugh. Our marriage didn't end that night. But it changed, and both of us knew it.